Ambassador Elena Vasquez walked through the polished marble halls of the Galactic Concordat building on Centauri Prime. Her footsteps echoed in the vast space designed to make visitors feel small. The alien architects had built this place too. Remind everyone who really held power in the galaxy. It was not humans. 20-3 years had passed since the Treaty of Centauri Prime ended the First Galactic War, 23 years since humanity had helped bring peace to a burning galaxy. 23 years since they were told to be grateful for the few star systems they were allowed to keep. Elena stopped before the massive doors of the council chamber. The guards were Zephyrians, tall blue-skinned beings with 4 arms and cold, silver eyes. They looked down at her with barely hidden disgust. One of them scanned her credentials with more care than needed. They always did this to humans. "You may enter, Ambassador," the guard said in perfect standard galactic. His tone made it clear he would rather say something else. The council chamber was a circular room with seats arranged in tiers. Each species had their designated area based on their importance in the Concordat. The Krell Dominion sat at the top tier, their massive reptilian forms taking up twice the space of other delegates. Below them were the Zephyrians, then the Crystalline, Vorthek, and so on down the levels of power and influence. Humanity sat on the bottom tier, alone. Elena took her seat and opened her datapad. Today's agenda was typical trade disputes. Border adjustments, resource allocation, always the same pattern. The major powers would decide what they wanted. The smaller species would argue for scraps. Humanity would be ignored unless they became inconvenient. Chancellor Crux of the Krell Dominion called the session to order. His voice was a deep rumble that seemed to shake the chamber walls. Today we address the matter of shipping routes through the Kepler sector. Elena already knew how this would go. The Kepler sector had 3 hyperspace jump points that made trade much faster between the core worlds and the outer colonies. 2 of those jump points passed near human space. The Concordat wanted to reroute all traffic away from human systems. "The current routes pose security concerns," said Ambassador Zexhai of the Zephyrian hegemony. Her translated voice was smooth and melodic, but Elena heard the steel underneath. "Human space remains unstable. Their colonies lack proper oversight." Elena stood up. "With respect, Ambassador Zexhai, our colonies have maintained perfect safety records for over 2 decades. Not a single incident has occurred in human space since the treaty was signed." "Precisely the problem," rumbled Chancellor Crux. "Your species is too quiet, too controlled. It makes other members nervous." The irony was not lost on Elena. During the war, they called humans chaotic and unpredictable. Now they were suspicious because humans followed every rule perfectly. She had learned long ago that some beings would always find reasons to fear and hate. "Perhaps," said the Vorthek delegate in their crystal chime voice, "humans could provide additional guarantees. Enhanced monitoring of their fleet movements, regular inspections of their facilities, more restrictions. Always more restrictions." Elena looked around the chamber and saw the same expression on dozens of alien faces. They were not afraid of human chaos anymore. They were afraid of human competence. "The human fleet consists of 47 patrol craft and 18 cargo vessels," Elena said carefully. "Hardly a threat to galactic security." "Numbers can be deceiving," Chancellor Crux replied. "Your species has a talent for ... innovation." When pressed, Elena felt a chill at those words. The Chancellor was old enough to remember the war. He had seen what humans could do when they stopped holding back. But that was different. That was survival. This was supposed to be peace. The debate continued for 3 hours. In the end, the vote was predictable. The shipping routes would be moved. Human colonies would lose 20% of their trade revenue overnight. When Elena requested compensation, she was told that security came before profit. After the session, Elena walked to her office in the human section of the building. It was smaller than a storage closet in most alien embassies, but it was theirs. The walls were decorated with images from Earth and the human colonies, green forests, blue oceans, Cities full of people who remembered what it meant to be free. Her assistant, Marcus Chun, was waiting with a stack of reports. He was young, maybe 30, born after the war ended. He had never seen the galaxy burn, never watched entire star systems turn to glass, never heard the screams that echoed across hyperspace when the Krell Dominion decided that peace negotiations were taking too long. "How did it go?" Marcus asked. "Same as always," Elena replied. "They take what they want and tell us to be grateful." Marcus frowned. "The colonies are getting restless. Captain Morrison on New Terra sent another message. His people are tired of being treated like criminals for existing." Elena sat down heavily in her chair. She was 58 years old and had spent half her life fighting this same battle. Sometimes she wondered if it was worth it. If maybe humanity should have just said no to the treaty and let the galaxy burn a little longer. "What did you tell Captain Morrison?" she asked. "That patience is our greatest weapon right now," Marcus said. "That we're building something better." Elena nodded, but she was not sure she believed it anymore. Every year brought new restrictions, new suspicions, new ways for the other species to remind humanity of their place. The younger generation of aliens did not remember the war. They only knew the stories their parents told them about the dangerous humans who had to be watched and controlled. Her secure communicator chimed. A message from Admiral Sarah Chun on the human fleet flagship Defiance. Elena opened it and read. The brief text, her blood went cold. "Marcus," she said quietly, "send a priority message to all human colonies. Code Yellow." Code Yellow meant tensions were rising. It meant colony governors should review their emergency protocols. It meant that maybe, just maybe, the 23 years of peace were coming to an end. Marcus looked confused. "What happened?" Elena stared at the message again. 3 words that changed everything. Zephyrian ships are moving. The Defiance was monitoring hyperspace traffic near the border systems. Zephyrian military vessels were deploying in attack formations, moving toward human space. It might be exercises. It might be posturing. Or it might be something worse. Elena walked to her window and looked out at the beautiful city of New Geneva. Aliens of dozens of species walked the streets together in apparent harmony. Vendors sold goods from across the galaxy. Children played in parks while their parents conducted business in gleaming towers. It all looked so peaceful, so perfect, so fragile. Elena remembered her father's words from when she was young. He had been a soldier in the war, one of the ones who came home broken and haunted. "Peace is not the absence of war, Elena," he had told her. "Peace is the presence of justice. And when justice fails, war is what comes next." She touched the emergency communicator on her desk. One button would send alerts to every human colony. Another would activate protocols that had been sleeping for 23 years. A third would send a message to Earth itself, to the people, who remembered what humans could do when they stopped pretending to be harmless. For now, she left the buttons alone. For now, there was still hope that diplomacy could solve this. For now, peace was still possible, but Elena Vasquez had not survived this long by ignoring warning signs. And the signs were becoming impossible to ignore. Captain Maria Santos watched the stars through the viewport of the medical transport ship. Mercy's Dawn. The ship was old but reliable, designed for one purpose: saving lives. Her cargo hold was filled with medical supplies bound for the colony. World of Haven's Rest, where a plague had been spreading for 3 months. The plague was not natural. Everyone knew it, but no one said it out loud. It had appeared too suddenly, spread too perfectly, and affected only humans. The Galactic Concordat's medical teams had been slow to respond. Very slow. When they finally arrived, they spent more time studying the disease than treating it. "Captain," called her navigator, Lieutenant James Park, "we're approaching the border of Zephyrian space. Should I request passage clearance?" Maria nodded. The fastest route to Haven's Rest went through a small section of Zephyrian territory. The treaty allowed medical ships free passage during emergencies. It was one of the few protections humans still had. "Send the clearance request?" Include our medical certification and cargo manifest. The response came back 30 minutes later, not from traffic control, but from a Zephyrian military vessel. The destroyer Blue Talon appeared on their sensors, weapons powered but not locked on. Transport vessel, this is Commander Vexstar of the Blue Talon. Prepare to be boarded for inspection. Maria felt her stomach tighten. Medical ships were supposed to be immune from inspection during emergency runs. Commander, we are on a medical emergency mission. Our cargo is time-sensitive medicine for plague victims. All vessels entering Zephyrian space must be inspected. This is not negotiable. Lieutenant Park looked worried. Captain, the delay will cost us 6 hours. People are dying on Haven's Rest. Maria had been a transport captain for 15 years. She had seen how the rules changed when it came to humans. What was law for other species became suggestions when humans were involved. Blue Talon, we request expedited processing due to the medical emergency nature of our mission. Negative. Full inspection protocol will be followed. The boarding party arrived 2 hours later. 6 Zephyrian soldiers in full combat armor, led by Commander Vexstar himself. He was typical of his species, tall, blue-skinned, with 4 arms and silver eyes that showed no emotion. His armor was decorated with battle honors from the war. Where is your cargo manifest? He demanded. Maria handed over the datapad. The manifest was simple: antibiotics, medical equipment, food supplements, and basic supplies. Everything needed to fight a plague. Nothing that could be used as a weapon. Commander Vexstar studied the manifest for a long time. Too long. He was looking for something that was not there. Your medical supplies could be used to create biological weapons, he said finally. They're antibiotics, Maria replied, keeping her voice calm. They cure disease. They don't create it. Any substance can be weaponized with the right knowledge. Humans have such knowledge. The inspection lasted 4 hours. The Zephyrians tore apart every crate, scanned every item, and questioned every crew member. They found exactly what the manifest said they would find: medicine for sick people. You may proceed, Commander Vexstar said. His tone suggested he was disappointed. Maria waited until the Zephyrians were gone before allowing herself to feel angry. 4 hours. 4 hours while people died because aliens thought human medicine was somehow dangerous. The Mercy's Dawn jumped to hyperspace and raced toward Haven's Rest. They arrived to find a world in crisis. The main city's hospital was overflowing. Temporary medical centers had been set up in schools and community buildings. The death toll was climbing every day. Dr. Rachel Kim, the colony's chief medical officer, met them at the spaceport. She looked exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes spoke of weeks without proper sleep. Thank the stars you're here, she said. We lost 37 people yesterday alone. The children's ward is the worst. Maria helped unload the supplies personally. Every crate represented lives that could be saved. Every hour of delay had cost human lives while aliens worried about imaginary weapons. Doctor, Maria said quietly as they worked, have the Concordat medical teams been helpful? Dr. Kim's face darkened. They're more interested in studying the plague than stopping it. They keep taking samples and running tests, but they won't share their findings. Meanwhile, people die. The truth was becoming clear. The Galactic Concordat was not really trying to help. They were studying how the plague affected humans, learning what worked and what did not, gathering data for future use. Maria spent 3 days on Haven's Rest, helping distribute supplies and assisting the medical teams. She saw children who would never grow up, parents who would never see their families again, all because medicine had been delayed by suspicious aliens who saw weapons where none existed. On the flight back to human space, Maria sent her report to Ambassador Vasquez. She described the inspection, the delays, and what she had seen on Haven's Rest. She recommended filing a formal complaint with the Galactic Concordat. The complaint was filed 2 weeks later. Ambassador Vasquez presented it to the Council with careful diplomatic language and supporting evidence. She asked for investigation of the delays and assurance that medical ships would receive proper emergency treatment in the future. The response was predictable. The Zephyrian delegate, Ambassador HFY, expressed regret for any inconvenience but defended the inspection as necessary for security. The plague, she suggested, might be the result of human biological weapons research gone wrong. The inspection had been justified precaution. Chancellor Crux of the Krell Dominion agreed. Human medical knowledge has always been ... concerning. Their ability to create both cures and plagues from the same materials requires vigilance. No apology, no promise of change. No recognition that human lives had been lost because of alien paranoia, but Maria's story spread through human space anyway. Colony governors shared it with their populations. Ship captains talked about it in spaceport bars. Families who had lost loved ones on Haven's Rest made sure everyone knew why help had arrived too late. The anger was quiet at first. Humans had learned to keep their emotions hidden during the long years of peace. But anger has a way of building pressure, especially when it has nowhere to go. Captain Morrison on New Terra was the first to act. When a Zephyrian patrol ship ordered his freight convoy to stop for inspection, he refused. Medical supplies for Port Unity, he announced over the com. Emergency priority. All vessels must submit to inspection, the patrol captain replied. Negative. People are dying. We're not stopping. The freight ships jumped to hyperspace before the Zephyrians could react. No shots were fired, but a line had been crossed. A human had said no to alien authority. The incident was reported to the Galactic Concordat. Captain Morrison was ordered to report for questioning. He refused that too. New Terra's governor backed him up, claiming colonial authority over internal shipping. More incidents followed. Human ships began avoiding alien space when possible. Colony governors started questioning Concordat regulations. Trade agreements were reviewed and sometimes rejected. The other species watched these developments with growing concern. They had grown comfortable with compliant humans. Humans who followed rules and accepted restrictions without complaint. These new humans reminded them too much of the ones from the war. Admiral Sarah Chun received new orders from the Colonial Council. All human ships were to travel in groups when passing through alien space. Medical transports would receive escort vessels. If fired upon, they were authorized to defend themselves. For the first time in 23 years, human military vessels powered their weapons while crossing alien borders. For the first time since the treaty, humans prepared to fight back if attacked. The galaxy noticed. Old veterans remembered what human ships looked like when they stopped pretending to be harmless. Younger aliens learned why their parents spoke of humans in whispers. Ambassador Vasquez tried to calm the situation through diplomatic channels. She met with alien delegates, attended emergency sessions, and worked 18-hour days to prevent the growing crisis from exploding into open conflict, but she could see the writing on the wall. The other species were not interested in treating humans as equals. They wanted servants or victims, not partners, and humans were tired of playing either role. The breaking point was coming. Everyone could feel it approaching like a storm on the horizon. The only question was what would provide the spark that turned 23 years of cold peace into hot war. The alarm bells rang across New Harmony at 0347 local time. Colony Governor David Reynolds jumped out of bed and ran to his communication center. The emergency screen showed multiple red dots approaching from deep space. Ships, many ships, moving fast toward the colony. How many? He asked his night duty officer. 47 vessels, Governor. Krell configuration. They're not responding to hails. Reynolds felt ice in his stomach. New Harmony was one of 3 human agricultural colonies in the outer systems. 2 million people lived here, growing food for the other human worlds. They had no military defenses except a few patrol craft and an orbital defense platform with outdated weapons. Send the emergency signal to all human worlds, Reynolds ordered. Code Red, we're under attack. The Krell fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. Their ships were massive, dark shapes that blotted out the stars. The flagship was the Eternal Conquest, a dreadnought that had burned a dozen Worlds during the last war. The communication came from Admiral Vexvolum himself. His reptilian face filled the screen, scarred from old battles and cold with purpose. Human colony of New Harmony, you have been found in violation of the treaty. Of Centauri Prime, your illegal military buildup threatens galactic peace. You have 1 hour to evacuate all civilians from the planet's surface. Governor Reynolds stared at the screen in shock. Admiral, there has been some mistake. We have no military buildup. This is an agricultural world. Our only weapons are hunting, rifles and farming equipment. Our intelligence indicates otherwise. You have 1 hour. The transmission ended. Governor Reynolds looked around his emergency center at the faces of his staff. They were scared, confused. They had done nothing wrong, and everyone knew it. Governor, said his security chief, our defense platform has 4 pulse cannons and maybe 20 missiles. Against 47 Krell ships, we might last 5 minutes. Reynolds nodded. He activated the colony-wide emergency broadcast system. Citizens of New Harmony, this is Governor Reynolds. We are facing an immediate military threat. All civilians must report to designated evacuation centers immediately. This is not a drill. Move quickly, but do not panic. We will get through this together. The evacuation began, but 2 million people could not be moved in 1 hour. The transport ships and shuttlecraft worked frantically, but it was impossible. Children cried as families were separated. Elderly colonists moved too slowly. The spaceports became crowded with desperate people. At exactly 1 hour and 3 minutes. The Krell fleet opened fire. The orbital defense platform died first. Its shields lasted 18 seconds against concentrated fire from 6 heavy cruisers. The explosion lit up the night sky of New Harmony. Like a second sun, then the bombardment of the planet began. The Krell did not target military installations because there were none. They targeted the cities, the farms, the schools and hospitals, and homes where humans lived and worked and raised their children. Reynolds watched from the evacuation command ship as his world burned. Entire cities vanished in flashes of light. The capital city of Haven Valley, home to 500,000 people, became a crater 5 kilometers wide. The agricultural domes that fed 16 human colonies were turned to glass and ash. Governor, his communication officer said with tears in her eyes, we're receiving similar reports from Kepler's Garden and Terra Verde. Both colonies are under attack. The Krell fleet has split into 3 groups, 3 human worlds, 6 million people, all being destroyed at the same time by an enemy that claimed they were preventing human rearmament. The attacks lasted 6 hours. When they ended, 3 thriving human colonies had been reduced to burning wastelands. The final casualty count would reach 4.8 million dead. Most were civilians, farmers, teachers, children who had never seen a weapon larger than a hunting rifle. The news reached Earth 12 hours later through emergency hyperspace relays. Admiral Sarah Chun was in her office aboard the Defiance when the reports came in. She read them twice, unable to believe what she was seeing. Her aide, Commander Torres, stood at attention beside her desk. His face was pale with shock and growing anger. Admiral, the Colonial Council is demanding immediate military response. Governor Martinez of New Texas is mobilizing his system defense force. Captain Morrison says his people are ready to fight. Admiral Chun stood up slowly. She was 62 years old and had spent her entire career keeping the peace, maintaining the careful balance that let humans survive in a galaxy that feared them, following orders that kept humanity's true strength hidden. She walked to her secure communication station and entered her authorization codes. The screen flickered and connected her directly to the President of Earth. Admiral Chun, President Williams said. His voice was tight with controlled fury. I assume you've seen the reports. Yes, Mr. President. 3 colonies, nearly 5 million dead. The Krell claimed they were preventing human military buildup. Military buildup? President Williams repeated the words like they tasted bitter. Farming equipment and irrigation systems. Admiral Chun had known this day would come. Had hoped it would not, but had prepared for it anyway. Every human military Officer had prepared for it. Mr. President, the Krell have made their position clear. They don't want to control us or contain us. They want to eliminate us. This wasn't punishment or intimidation. This was genocide. I know. President Williams was quiet for a long moment. Sarah, how long have we been friends? 37 years, sir. Then you know I've spent my entire political career working for peace, trying to prove that humans could coexist with the other species, trying to show them we weren't the monsters they thought we were. Yes, sir. I was wrong. They were never going to accept us. They were just waiting for an excuse to finish what they started in the last war. Admiral Chun felt something cold and hard settle in her chest. Something that had been sleeping for 23 years was beginning to wake up? What are your orders? Mr. President? The Galactic Concordat voted 3 hours ago to support the Krell action. They claim the attacks were justified preventive measures. They're calling the dead colonists acceptable casualties in the name of galactic security. Admiral Chun closed her eyes. The Concordat had just endorsed the murder of nearly 5 million humans. There would be no justice, no consequences. No punishment for the attackers, Mr. President. The Treaty of Centauri Prime is hereby declared null and void by executive order. All previous restrictions on human military activity are lifted immediately. Draconian Protocol is now in effect. Admiral Chun felt her heart skip a beat. Draconian Protocol, the code name for humanity's true military capacity. The weapons and ships and technologies they had been developing in secret for over 2 decades. The preparations they had made for the day when diplomacy finally failed. Sir, are you certain? Once we implement Draconian Protocol, there's no going back. The galaxy will see what we really are. They just murdered 5 million of our people and called it justice. They've made their choice. Now we make ours. Admiral Chun straightened to attention. For 23 years, she had commanded patrol boats and transport ships, vessels designed to look harmless and weak. She had attended diplomatic dinners and smiled at aliens who treated humans like dangerous pets. That was over now. Admiral Chun, President Williams continued, you are hereby promoted to Supreme Fleet Commander of all human military forces. Your orders are simple. Retrieve our people from the dead colonies and make the Krell Dominion pay for what they've done. Use any means necessary. Understood, Mr. President. What about the other species? The ones who voted to support the Krell? The Galactic Concordat has declared war on humanity in all but name. We're simply going to make it official. Admiral Chun ended the communication and turned to Commander Torres. His expression had changed from shock to something much darker. Something that reminded her of the faces she had seen during the war, when humans stopped pretending to be civilized. Commander, send a priority message to all human fleet elements. Authentication code Omega 77, message reads, Draconian. Protocol is now active. All restrictions lifted. Report to designated rally points immediately. Yes, Admiral. What about our orders to maintain communications silence? Admiral Chun smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Communications. Silence is over, Commander. It's time the galaxy remembered why they were afraid of us in the first place. As Commander Torres sent the message, Admiral Chun looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Krell Dominion was celebrating their easy victory over defenseless human colonies. They thought they had eliminated a threat. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Admiral Vexval stood on the bridge of the Eternal Conquest, watching the burning remains of New Harmony through the main viewport. The human agricultural world was now a collection of glowing craters and ash clouds. Mission accomplished. Admiral. His tactical officer reported, we're receiving a priority transmission from Krell Command. The other target colonies have been successfully neutralized. Vex Valoom nodded with satisfaction. 3 human worlds destroyed in a single coordinated strike. The human threat had been reduced by 6 million individuals. The galaxy was safer now. Any response from the human fleet? He asked. Negative, sir. Their patrol craft fled the system without engaging, as expected. Vex Valoom had fought humans during the last war. He remembered their desperation then, their willingness to sacrifice everything, just to survive another day. But that was different. That was when they had nothing left to lose. These modern humans were soft, comfortable. They had forgotten how to fight. "Set course for the Krell homeworld," he ordered. "We'll return in triumph." The fleet was halfway to the hyperspace jump point when the tactical officer's voice changed. "Admiral, I'm detecting unknown contacts approaching from the asteroid belt. How many?" "Uncertain, sir. The signatures are strange. They don't match any known ship configurations." Vex Valoom frowned. The asteroid belt of this system was empty, except for mining operations. There should be nothing there capable of threatening a Krell battle fleet. "Put it on the main screen." The image that appeared made every officer on the bridge freeze in shock. Ships were emerging from the asteroid belt, but they looked like nothing anyone had ever seen. They were sleek and dark, moving with impossible grace through space. Their hulls seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. "How many ships?" Vex Valoom demanded. "I count ... Admiral, there are over 200 vessels. And more are still appearing. 200 ships, hidden in what everyone thought was an empty asteroid belt." Vex Valoom felt the first touch of unease. How long had they been there? How had they remained undetected? "Are they responding to our hails?" "Yes, sir. Audio only." The voice that came through the speakers was calm and professional. "Human, female. Krell Fleet, this is Admiral Sarah Chun of the Human Defense Force. You have committed acts of genocide against civilian populations. Surrender immediately and prepare to be taken into custody for war crimes." Vex Valoom almost laughed. "Human, you are outnumbered. We count 47 heavy warships against your small patrol craft. Withdraw or be destroyed." "Admiral Vex Valoom," the human voice replied, and he was surprised she knew his name. "You're operating under outdated intelligence. Let me correct some misconceptions." The human ships suddenly accelerated. Not the gradual build-up that normal ships needed, but instant movement from rest to incredible speed. They closed the distance to the Krell fleet in seconds, not minutes. "All ships, engage." "The humans," Vex Valoom ordered. "Show them the price of challenging the Krell Dominion." The Krell fleet opened fire with everything they had. Plasma cannons, particle beams, and quantum torpedoes filled space with deadly energy. Enough firepower to destroy a small moon was directed at the approaching human vessels. The weapons passed right through them. "What?" Vex Valoom stared at the tactical display in disbelief. "Report." "Sir, the human ships appear to be phasing. Our weapons are having no effect." Phasing technology? The ability to shift matter partially out of normal space, making it untouchable by conventional weapons. It was theoretical, impossible. The energy requirements alone should have made it unusable in combat. "Admiral," his weapons officer called out, "the human ships are returning fire." The human weapons were unlike anything in the Krell arsenal. Beams of coherent energy that seemed to bend space itself struck the eternal conquest. The shields held for exactly 3 seconds before collapsing completely. The beam cut through the ship's armor like it was made of paper. "Damage report," Vex Valoom shouted. "Deck 17 through 23 are gone, sir. Just ... done. No explosion. No debris. The metal just stopped existing." Around the fleet, other Krell ships were suffering the same fate. The massive dreadnought Iron Fang simply vanished as a human weapon enveloped it completely. The heavy cruiser Bloodstrike broke in half when something that looked like concentrated gravity crushed it from all sides at once. "All ships, retreat to hyperspace," Vex Valoom ordered. "Sir, we cannot. Something is interfering with our hyperspace generators." Vex Valoom looked at the tactical display again. His fleet of 47 ships was being systematically destroyed by human vessels that moved like ghosts and fired weapons that defied the laws of physics. In 10 minutes of combat, he had lost 30 ships. "Admiral Chun," he said into the communicator, his voice no longer confident, "I request terms for surrender." "Surrender was offered 5 minutes ago," the human replied. You chose to fight instead. Now you face the consequences. The Eternal Conquest shook as another impossible weapon struck its hull. Vexvolume watched his bridge officers work frantically at their stations, trying to find some way to fight back against an enemy that seemed to exist outside normal space. How? He asked more to himself than anyone else. How did you hide ships like this for 23 years? Admiral Chun's voice answered him anyway. We didn't hide them, Admiral. We built them. Every mining station you ignored was a shipyard. Every research facility you dismissed was a weapons laboratory. Every cargo ship that passed through your space was carrying military components to secret assembly points. The truth hit Vexvolume like a physical blow. For over 2 decades, humans had been building a fleet under the galaxy's nose. While alien species congratulated themselves on keeping humanity weak and contained, humans had been preparing for exactly this moment, the asteroid belt, he said. Hollowed out and converted to a military base 8 years ago, Admiral Chun. Confirmed. We have 17 such facilities throughout human space. Each one capable of producing warships that your scientists couldn't even imagine. Another human ship materialized directly in front of the Eternal Conquest. This one was different, larger, more angular. It looked like it was made of crystallized darkness. Admiral Vexvolume, Admiral Chun's voice said, you're looking at the HSF Retribution. Flagship of the Human Retribution Fleet, it was built specifically for this day. For species like yours that mistake mercy for weakness, the Retribution fired a single shot. The beam struck the Eternal Conquest's main reactor and did something impossible. Instead of exploding, the reactor simply stopped working. Every system on the ship went dark. Life support, weapons, engines, everything. Your ship is now disabled, Admiral Chun said. Your crew will be taken prisoner and tried for genocide. You will live long enough to see what happens to species that murder human children. Vexvolume floated in the darkness of his dead ship and wondered how everything had gone so wrong so quickly. This morning he had been the hero who eliminated a human threat. Now he was a prisoner of war, captured by enemies who fought with weapons that shouldn't exist. Admiral Chun, he said into his personal communicator, hoping it still worked. What are you? We're what you made us, came the reply. 23 years ago, you forced us to sign a treaty that treated us like dangerous animals who needed to be caged. You were right to be afraid. You just weren't afraid enough. Through the darkened viewport, Vexvolume could see the human fleet regrouping. Ships that moved like liquid shadow. Weapons that rewrote the laws of physics. Technology that made the most advanced alien civilizations look primitive by comparison. We spent those 23 years preparing for the day when diplomacy would fail, Admiral Chun continued. When species like yours decided that the only good human was a dead human. Congratulations, Admiral. You've just given us permission to stop pretending to be harmless. The last thing Vexvolume saw before the human boarding pods attached to his ship was the rest of the human fleet jumping to hyperspace. They were heading toward Krell space, toward his homeworld. Toward the billions of Krell who had celebrated the destruction of human colonies just hours ago. Admiral Chun, he whispered. Please, my people. They didn't know. Neither did ours, came the cold reply. But that didn't stop you from killing them. Vexvolume closed his eyes and waited for the human soldiers to come for him. In the distance, space itself seemed to bend and twist as more human ships appeared. From nowhere, ships that looked like nightmares given form. Ships that carried weapons designed by a species that had spent 23 years learning to hate. The galaxy was about to discover what humans could do when they stopped following the rules. 6 months after the Treaty of Centauri Prime was dissolved, Admiral Sarah Chun stood in what had once been the Galactic Concordat Council chamber. The marble halls were cracked and broken. Blast marks scarred the walls where Krell defenders had made their last stand. The great circular chamber where alien species had once debated humanity's fate was now silent except for the echo of her footsteps. She was no longer just Admiral Chun. The surviving alien governments called her the Supreme Commander of Human Forces, the Scourge of the Galaxy, the Butcher of Worlds. She preferred her original title, but names didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that she had won. The victory had been complete and terrible. The Krell homeworld was gone, turned into an asteroid field by weapons that broke planets apart at the molecular level. The Zephyrian hegemony had surrendered after. Their capital city was relocated to a different dimension for 3 days. The Vorthak had simply vanished when the humans demonstrated technology that could turn crystal beings into sand with a thought. 47 species had been part of the Galactic Concordat when the war began. 15 were extinct. 22 had surrendered unconditionally. 10 had fled to the far edges of the galaxy and were pretending to be primitive civilizations. Admiral Chen walked to the center of the chamber where a simple metal chair had been placed. Around her, representatives of the surviving species knelt on the broken floor. They had been waiting for 2 hours. She had kept them waiting on purpose. Chancellor Crux of what remained of the Krell Dominion was barely recognizable. The massive reptilian leader who had once looked down on humans from the highest tier of the chamber was now gaunt and broken. His people numbered less than 50 million, scattered across refugee ships and begging for sanctuary. "Supreme Commander," he said, his voice barely a whisper, "we come to seek terms." Admiral Chen sat in the chair and looked down at the aliens who had once ruled the galaxy. She felt no satisfaction in their fear, no joy in their defeat. Only a cold emptiness where her faith in peaceful coexistence used to be. "Terms," she repeated. "The same kind of terms you offered the colonies you destroyed?" "Please," said Ambassador HFY of the Zephyrians. Her 4 arms were bound behind her back, and her silver eyes were dim with despair. "Our people have learned. We understand now. Humans are the superior species. We accept your dominance." "Superior." Admiral Chun tasted the word like poison. "Is that what you think this is about? Proving who's superior?" She stood up and walked to where the old species hierarchy seats had been. Someone had painted human names over the alien text. Earth, New. Terra, Haven Colony. The names of human worlds, both living and dead. "You destroyed 3 of our worlds because you thought we were building weapons," she said. "You were wrong. We weren't building weapons then. We were growing food, teaching children, living peaceful lives." She turned back to face the kneeling aliens. "But we're building weapons now. Every day, every hour. Weapons you can't imagine. Weapons that make what you've seen look like children's toys." Chancellor Crux raised his head. "What do you want from us?" It was the question Admiral Chun had been asking herself for months. What did humanity want? Justice? Revenge? Safety? All of those things were possible now. Humans had the power to reshape the galaxy however they chose. "I want," she said slowly, "to understand why." The aliens looked confused. "Why did you do it?" Admiral Chun asked. "We followed every rule. Obeyed every restriction, stayed in our assigned systems, helped you fight your wars, saved your worlds. And you repaid us by trying to commit genocide." "Why?" Ambassador HFY was the first to answer. "We were afraid." "Of what?" "We had 47 patrol boats and some cargo ships." "What was there to fear?" "Not of your weapons," HFY said. "Of what you represented. Humans adapt too quickly. Learn too fast, change too much. In 100 years you would have surpassed us all." Admiral Chun nodded slowly. The truth at last. It had never been about human aggression or human weapons. It had been about human potential. The other species had tried to destroy humanity not because of what humans were, but because of what they might become. "So you decided to kill us before we could prove you right." "Yes," Chancellor Crux admitted. "It was the only way to preserve the order we had built." Admiral Chen walked back to her chair. Behind her, the massive viewport showed the space above Centauri Prime. Human ships moved through the void like metallic sharks. Some were visible to normal sensors. Others existed partially outside reality itself. All of them carried weapons that could sterilize star systems. "Commander Torres," she said to her aide, "bring in the others." The chamber doors opened and a group of humans entered. Admiral Chun recognized most of them. Colonel Martinez from the new Texas Defense Force, Captain Morrison, who had defied the Zephyrians months ago, Dr. Kim from Haven's Rest, who had survived the plague and the bombing, Governor Reynolds from New Harmony, one of the few who had escaped the genocide. They all had the same look in their eyes. The cold, hard expression of people who had seen too much death and learned too much hate. The vote was unanimous, Colonel Martinez said. Every human colony, every ship captain, every survivor, they all agree. Admiral Chen knew what the vote had been about. The question that had been debated in human space for weeks. What to do with the species that had tried to exterminate them? Tell me, she said. Complete extermination, Colonel Martinez said without emotion. Every alien species that supported the genocide, their homeworlds, their colonies, their ships. Everything. We have the weapons to do it cleanly. No suffering, they'll just stop existing. The kneeling aliens began to tremble, some started to weep. Others closed their eyes and waited for death. Admiral Chun looked at them and felt nothing. No pity, no mercy, no regret. These were the beings who had murdered 5 million humans and called it justified, who had tried to destroy an entire species out of fear and jealousy. Supreme Commander, Dr. Kim said quietly, they made their choice when they voted. To support the attacks, now we make ours. Admiral Chun stood up again. The weight of the decision pressed down on her like gravity from a dying star. With a single word, she could end the threat to humanity forever. 40 alien species would cease to exist, and humans would inherit a galaxy cleansed of those who had tried to destroy them. No, she said. Not every human in the chamber stared at her in shock. Colonel Martinez stepped forward. Admiral, with respect. They tried to commit genocide. They would have succeeded if we hadn't been prepared. They'll try again if we give them the chance. Maybe, Admiral Chun agreed. But if we exterminate them, what does that make us? Survivors, Captain Morrison said harshly. The same thing they tried to prevent us from being. Admiral Chen walked to the great viewport and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there were the ruins of New Harmony, the graves of children who would never grow up, the ash of dreams that would never be fulfilled. They were afraid of what we might become, she said. If we slaughter entire species, we prove they were right to fear us. She turned back to face the chamber, but they were wrong about one thing. They thought the only way to deal with us was to destroy us. That shows a failure of imagination. Admiral Chun looked down at the kneeling aliens. You will live. Your species will continue. But the galaxy has a new order now, and you will learn your place in it. Chancellor Crux looked up with desperate hope. What place? Humans will govern the core systems. We will control hyperspace routes, trade agreements, and military policy. Alien species may petition for permission to colonize new worlds, but only if they prove they can coexist peacefully. And if we refuse? Ambassador Zexhai asked. Admiral Chun smiled, and it was not a kind expression. Then you'll discover that there are fates worse than extinction. We've learned to be very creative with our weapons. The terms were simple. Total human dominance backed by overwhelming force. The surviving alien species would be junior partners in a galaxy ruled by the beings they had tried to destroy. It was not the peace Admiral Chun had once hoped for, but it was the peace that remained possible after trust had been shattered and millions had died. As the alien delegates were led away to sign their surrender documents, Admiral Chun remained alone in the broken chamber. The weight of command felt heavier than ever. She had saved humanity from extinction, secured their future among the stars, built an empire that would last for millennia. She wondered if the children of New Harmony would have approved.